Counterparts, an analysis by Alex Shinada.
Ben Jett.
And Greg the Brazen.
The summary. Counterparts details a single day in the life of Farrington, a middle-aged married father who works in a law firm as a copier, who gets yelled at by his boss, Mr. Elaine, often for his poor work. Farrington leaves his work at one point to go to the pub, comes back, doesn't finish his work, and then after work goes back to the pubs, where he sells his possessions for alcohol, unfaithfully looks at a young woman, and loses to a young man in arm wrestling. And when he finally returns home, he's angry and not drunk, and he beats his son.
Color and imagery. Counterparts is overwhelmingly dark. Joyce emphasizes a cold, dark, foggy atmosphere. To add to the cold imagery, Joyce has Counterparts take place in the middle of February, when days are short. Farrington's eyes are often mentioned as heavy and dirty, which not only shows the stature of the man, but also shows the effects of alcoholism and decay on Farrington's body. Farrington often mentions the bars in a warm, comfortable, escape from the climate sort of attitude, which shows his comfortability and his feeling at home with bars. In contrast to the dark colors and imagery, the woman in the bar that Farrington finds attractive, who is not Farrington's wife by the way, is seen to be wearing bright colors. Being one of the only scenes with color, Joyce is showing how lustful and adulterous Farrington is willing to be.
Symbols. His inability to get drunk signifies his habitual alcoholism and furthers the idea of his irreducible lifestyle. His most basest and debauched form is simultaneously a moral failing as he attempts to cheat on his wife, beats his son, and comes back penniless. The decay motif. Joyce includes descriptions of Farrington, his yellowed eyes, and his plum wine face. However, one example in particular shows the light fading from within Farrington. In a battle of feats of strength, Farrington loses despite his strongman reputation to a younger, scrawny colleague. An example of pervasive decay throughout him, he brought on by his alcoholism. Contrast. What really stands out is Joyce's decision to include a young woman adorned in a blue muslin scarf of peacock design in the middle of a dark, musty public house. Farrington attempts to court the woman but is quickly disregarded as insignificant and not worth her time. Her designs of youth and zeal are juxtaposed against Farrington's blighted existence, exemplifying the idea of his deleterious nature.
Paralysis. Farrington is stuck in his occupation, both by the little wage he is making and his inability to complete simple tasks because of his addiction to alcohol. Also because of Farrington's build, he feels like he should be working somewhere athletic or physical. So Farrington may be unhappy about his line of work entirely. Moving on towards the end of the piece, we see Farrington's son, Tom, paralyzed in fear of his father. We can assume that this is not the first altercation, as you can sense the child's fear, and we see that although Farrington starts to become physical, Tom can do nothing but take the beatings and cry out his offerings of a prayer. A cog in the machine of modern commerce, his physical strength is useless in his job as a scrivener. At work, pink, hairless Mr. Ian dominates him. Farrington's small wage keeps him subject. He asserts dominance at home by beating his son, Miguel. Farrington and his wife are paralyzed in marriage. We can see this a couple of ways. Farrington's lust over the girl in the bar, how late his wife is mentioned in Counterparts, as well as she is first mentioned only to explain what he can't have. There's nothing positive mentioned about their relationship. Now for the main paralysis in Counterparts. Alcoholism is paralyzing Farrington. And my next point goes hand in hand. His attitude is always stuck in anger caused by his immense alcoholism. He felt savage and thirsty and revengeful, annoyed with himself and everyone else. Joyce. He never seems happy. He often gets angry to a point of violence, and we see that he is disrespectful to the relationships around him. Farrington would often leave work to go day drink at the bars, and it even mentions at one point that on this random day in the middle of February, he left work 5 times to go get a drink. We can see that all Farrington wants is another drink, and because of this addiction, we see decay of him physically and in his relationships.
Theme. The cycle of abuse. Mr. Ayen berates and demeans Farrington in a particularly humiliating way, and it is through Farrington's short fuse that we see his lack of patience for his son as well. Beha writes, Farrington is played off against Mr. Ayen, and more compellingly against his son Tom. Farrington plays a specific role throughout the chapter, being both the abused and the abuser. Day of the ordinary. Farrington's alcohol withdrawal symptoms are such as an unquenchable thirst, mood swings, and shakes are indicative of a greater habitual alcohol consumption. The day we examine through this chapter is one of countless days, all comprised of the same key elements. Effects of alcoholism. It not only deteriorates his body physically, such as his eyes turning yellow and his skin a dark red, but simultaneously erodes his ability to focus on his work and dulls his thought processes. Joyce criticizes Farrington's numbness in his day-to-day life, portraying a life of hedonistic pleasure-seeking, constantly chasing the out-of-reach prize, only to walk away defeated. The Catholic Church in this chapter has a unique absence until the very end, where Tom, Farrington's son, recounts that his mother is at church. Despite the faith of his wife, the church does not provide a tangible benefit to Farrington nor his family. Joyce aims to shed light on the lack of support that the church provides, even though it is of utmost necessity in this case. The genteel hierarchy of Farrington's workplace is made clear through Joyce's choice to make Farrington a scrivener. His work is menial, yet important to his boss. Despite that, his pay is a paltry sum, later wasted on booze. Mr. Ayen and his mistress, Miss Delacour, enjoy luxuries and lavish living. Given this power over people like Farrington, they use it to demean and belittle those around them in a pathetic display of the most minute authority.
The significance and age and place in life. The age and alcoholism shown by Farrington shows Ireland and the Irish in a more nuanced sense than some of the other stories. Specifically, it shows how, due to the abuse by Britain, they've been forced into institutions that set them up for failure. His status as a father furthers this through showing how it will impact future generations with a cycle of abuse. In comparison to the childhood stories, here Farrington is much like one of those abusers within those stories, and his son is much like one of the main characters, furthering this cycle and how Ireland has begun adopting Britain's worst qualities. Some of the relation to greater themes of Dubliners. The first one, the Irish are forced into institutions that set them up for failure, seen in Farrington's work, and the only way he knows how to cope through alcohol and violence. This is also seen in a story like The Sisters in regards to the church. Another theme that is seen throughout Dubliners, seen in this story, is the idea that this all occurs in just one singular day, as many stories have this same idea, which shows the universality of the stories in regards to the Irish. Another idea repeated throughout Dubliners and seen in this story is the cycle of use, which is adopted by the Irish and is shown in this story also. And finally, the ideas of decay/degradation are heavily intertwined with Dubliners. However, in this chapter, a spin is put in it, in which the Irish are characterized with this, not the British, who are normally described as decay and degrading. This shows the more scarred and nuanced character of the Irish after the abuse they suffered by the British. The title, Counterparts, is a reference to the greater counterparts between the relationships in the story. Specifically, Farrington and his son are counterparts in the way that they are both paralyzed and abused. Farrington and Mr. Lane, however, are both counterparts in the way that they are the abuser and the paralyzer. In the words of Scholes, it shows the interchangeability of cogs in a great machine.